Stakeholders have advocated for increased strategic support and awareness towards inclusive gender representation in workplaces in order to bridge the gap in women representation in management cadre in the society. They noted the need to continuously widen measures and efforts that foster inclusive work environment that recognizes the rights of everyone, irrespective of gender. The stakeholders made this call at the 2023 Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, and Pengasson Women Commission Conference, with the theme Entrenching Equitable Opportunities for Women Towards Inclusiveness, Innovation and Excellence. Chief Executive, Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Benga Komolafe, represented at the event, described the theme of the conference as very apt as it seeks to bridge the competency gap between the women and men and the need for equal opportunities with their male counterparts across all sectors of human endeavor. Now let's have this conversation on gender-based violence and how to put an end to it with Tayo Erela, the Executive Director, Tabitha Kumi Foundation. Did I get that right? Tabitha Kumi Foundation. Thank you for joining us on Newsnight.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Gender-based violence. As I said to you earlier, just behind the scene, when you mention gender-based violence, the very first thing that comes to people's mind is violence against women. You know, while we understand that women are more on the receiving end, we sure cannot say that it's limited to women. So how do we then balance this perspective in the minds of people when we say gender-based violence?
Thank you. Gender-based violence truly is not limited to women, but 95 to 98% of those who suffer gender-based violence are women. Men are in the minority. Men are usually the perpetrators. They are more the perpetrators than the survivors.
Yes, okay then. But then when we say gender-based violence, another point of interest is that many times the victims don't speak out for fear of stigmatization. Yes. How do we then help them come out of their shell?
Well, that's a very good question. It's important that, you know, we create more awareness. Now, people don't speak out because they are stigmatized or they are blamed. You know, people begin to say, why did you go there? Why did you dress the way you dressed? You know, you hear things like that. But we must understand that a baby that is violated in Pampers, is it the Pampers that made the perpetrator violate the baby? So we have to, there has to be a change of perception. And this only happens through continuous sensitization, helping people to understand. You don't blame the person who has been violated, because the person who has been violated is hurt, is broken, usually carries it for the rest of their lives. And so when we sensitize groups of people, communities, we help people to understand the importance of this. First of all, teach girls, for instance, about GBV. How to prevent, like what we do, we create safe spaces for girls, where girls can learn, where they can be taught, where they can understand what GBV is. And in the comfort of those spaces, they begin to speak out. They begin to say, oh, something like this happened to me. Incidentally, even some of our facilitators who are grown women, it is through the training, the capacity building that helps them to now be bold enough, you know, to speak out. So people don't speak out because of the stigma and because they don't get support. So when they know that the support is available, when they speak out, they have someone who comes to their rescue, who helps them to prosecute justice, who helps them to access health, who helps them to get psychosocial support, all that is needed. then more people will speak out. So we are getting more girls that are speaking out.
Okay, now I also want us to look at this perspective. There's a side of the victim or the sufferer, if you like, and then there's a side of the perpetrator. Do you also think that the perpetrator needs help as well? Because perhaps the perpetrator is only replicating his experience, their experience, you know. So have you thought of that holistic approach?
So, well, the truth about it is that when children grow up in a family where there's abuse, there's violence, their mother has been violated, they begin to see it sometimes as a normal way of life. So these are the issues. There are societal norms where a man feels that the way to control a woman is by battering her, where society accepts those things as a way to keep a woman in check, in quotes. You know, so this is why we need to keep talking to people and helping them to understand that that is not the right way. It's not the right way. You don't abuse, you don't abuse a woman to put her under. She doesn't stay under that way. And so when people understand, and also the society does not protect the perpetrator or stop him from being dealt with, from being punished, because that is what should be done to a woman. Sometimes, you know, you see people who support, especially in communities, when awareness has been made, enough awareness. You see, even in marginalized communities, it's the chief himself that is reporting cases and saying this happened. You see, so when that begins to happen, when perpetrators know that they will be reported, they will be punished, and then justice is done, there'll be a change of perception. The more cases, you know, that are judged, the more sentences we have, you know, the more support that women get, there'll be a change.
Let's look at...
It's gradual though, you know, because, you know, change is gradual. But there will definitely be an increase.
Let's see how we can put a lot in the few minutes that we have left for the brevity of time. Okay, I want us to look at the fact that gender-based violence is not limited to physical violence.
It's not.
Let's look at other ramifications: economic violence,
neglect,
mental violence. You know,
emotional neglect.
What about those other ramifications?
Well, they all present. And you know, what happens mostly is that when women suffer those types of violence, they take it as a normal part of life. So this is what awareness creation also does, you know, to help people to understand that, no, that situation is not right. And you don't have to remain there. You don't have to manage it. You have to speak about it, that this is your experience and it is wrong and it can be addressed. And some of those are things that can be addressed. They may not even be addressed in court. We have people like FIDA who support with things like that, even the police gender desk. We've had a lot of cases like that, you know, of violence in the terms of economic violence, you know, and neglect. And we have, you know, once the perpetrator knows that an organization is involved, their attitude changes.
Now let's put a benchmark to it very quickly so that we can know what we're dealing with here. At what point, before physical violence begins, at what point should a potential sufferer or victim draw the line and say this is gender-based violence?
Immediately there's any form of violence, you should speak out.
How do you categorize violence before you're being hit physically?
Throwing tantrums, okay. Throwing things, you know, already there's a problem. And you see, what happens is that women sometimes feel that, oh, he'll change. You know, with time he'll change. And, you know, we know many women who they didn't live to see the change. And so this is why it's important that any sign of violence should not be taken for granted. It should be reported, you should speak out. And also, for young girls, you know, a no is no. Their body belongs to them. It doesn't belong to anyone, you know, to play with, or to any sign of anyone touching making any unwanted touch should be spoken against. Whether it's a teacher, whether it's a caregiver, whether it's a parent or a neighbor, they should speak out. Speak to an adult. Speak to someone you can confide in.
Tayo Rele, Executive Director, Tabitha Kumi Foundation, thank you very much indeed for coming to Newsnight.